Hello again. This is part 2 of foundation piecing our rabbit for the Mystery Quilt. Last block. So I have trimmed off just the excess around my shape. Does make it a little bit easier. And I'm looking for the shape that says B1. So this is going to be my first piece. Now I have cut my pieces of fabric so they are larger than the shape that I'm actually going to be covering. So my first shape, to kind of get it where it needs to be, I'm just going to roughly fold over my seams so I can see where that shape is. I'm going to grab a bit of fabric glue, a bit of glue, or you can pin it, and I'm just going to put a bit of glue on there and attach my square. So now I'm going to have B1 closest to me for the moment, and I'm going to put my ruler onto the line between B1 and B2, fold it back so I can score it properly. Now I'm going to trim off this bit of excess, it will make it easier to put the next piece. I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch away from my fold, and then I'm going to get the bit of fabric that's going to be covering B2. And that is this rectangle here. So I'm going to put that down on my board right side up. I'm going to place my fabric and paper piece so that the edges of my fabric are roughly matching. And I'm going to gently flip that back, grab a couple of pins and pin that seam line between B1 and B2. There we go. Now I'm going to flip that back over my pins as if I'd sewn it, and I'm going to hold that up to the light and make sure that piece of fabric covers all of B2. Just going to move the camera around a little bit. There we go. So I've done my double check, and now I'm right to sew. So again, stitch length about 1.5. Now this is a little bit different than doing the rabbit ears, because now we are stitching to where another seam is going to intersect, whereas with the rabbit ears we were basically stitching all the way from one side to the other. So when I get towards that next line, I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch past it and just do a little back stitch so that when I pull my papers out, that seam doesn't come undone. You can stitch a little bit more over and not back stitch. It's your choice. Okay, so now I'm going to open that up, finger score it, and make sure I've got no pleat in that seam. So there's my first 2 pieces on. Now I'm looking for the next seam that I'm going to do, which is between B2 and B3. So I've got fabric now on B1, I've got fabric on B2, I'm about to put fabric at B3, which is the little nose. So I have got B1 closest to me. I'm going to put my ruler onto the seam between B2 and B3, score it, fold it over, trim my 1/4 inch seam, put my little rabbit nose down, right side up, line up about my 1/4 inch, fold over, king, flip it open as if I'd sewn it, hold it up to the light and make sure it covers all of the shape of B3. Flip it open, finger score. Now I would also normally pop up to the iron and just give it a bit of a press. Now I'm looking for the next seam. So I'm looking for the seam between B3 and B4, which is this long one down here. So paper side facing me, B1 is closest to me. I'm looking for that line between B3 and B4. I'm going to fold it over. Now, because I stitched a little bit past my line, as I pull back, I'm actually just tearing the paper so that when I fold that over, it's not getting, it's lying flat. Now I'm going to trim off my 1/4 inch. And the fabric I'm looking for now is another piece of my brown. So I'm going to lay that right side up, lift this over, line up my 1/4 inch lines. There we go. And flip that open. Now I can see if I do a little score about there, which is where this fabric has got to get to, plus a 1/4 inch, and I lay that over, I can actually see that I've not got enough fabric sticking out. So I'm actually going to move my fabric over just a little bit. Put my pins through. Fold it over. Fold it over as if I'd sewn it. Hold it up to the light and make sure that it's extending past this seam here between B4 and B5 and the seam between B4 and B6. Again, I can kind of also fold these back and just double check. Okay, so it's all looking a bit weird at the moment, but it comes out in the end. Okay, now I'm going to be looking to do the next seam between B4, which is the one I've just done, and B5, which is my green background. So put it on the mat with the B1 shape closest to me. I'm going to crease between B4 and B5. cut my 1/4 inch off, and that does not have to be a perfect 1/4 inch, just don't make it skinnier. Okay, grab my piece of green, lay that down. If it was print, it would be right sides up. Match up roughly my 1/4 inch allowance, fold back, pin, flip it over, open it up as if I'd sewn it, and double check. Oh, flip it over, Vanessa. And flip it open. So that's where I'm at now. Now I've only got to sew on the last 2 pieces at either end. So I've got B7 and B8. Oh, and B6. Forgot B6. Got to do B6 next. So I've just done B5 and now I've got to do B6. So I'm actually just going to do a quick pause, give this a press with the iron, and grab my B6 fabric. Okay, back again, just grab my B6, I left it over at the cutting table. So I'm going to lay this back on my mat, and B6 needs to be furthest away from me, so that when I fold the paper back, I'm folding back B6. And because I stitched past the ends of the line, I'm just going to tear the paper a little bit on those seams. Use my ruler. Now, there are shortcut ways of doing this. You can, for instance, use a little bit of template plastic to fold back over. There's also a ruler called the add a quarter ruler, which we normally have in stock, but we're out of stock at the moment. They'll be arriving in another week and a half. So if you do a lot of foundation piecing, the add a quarter ruler makes a big difference, because it basically bumps up against that edge there and gives you your 1/4 inch cut. But you can certainly do it without it. Oh, and I left my rotary cutter over at the table. Oh. Now, I'm just thinking of the flower. I want the flowers up the right way, which means putting them the wrong way. Okay, flip it over, make sure the fabric isn't caught, flip that up. It's going to be like my little bunny head, my little bunny nose. Okay. just going to give that a quick press. Won't be a sec. There we go. Now I've got my 2 corners, and what I'm going to do, because this is a big bit of fabric and it likes to flop around, I'm just going to get a little bit of fabric glue just to help hold it down so it doesn't flop around. Okay, so now I'm up to B7, which means I have B7 furthest away from me. Fold it back, break those stitches away from the paper if I need to. Trim my 1/4 inch. Rectangle in front of me, match those edges, flip open, pin along the seam, flip it over, make sure it's all okay, open it out, make sure it's covering the edges, sew the seam. There's that piece. Now I'm going to repeat for the other side. B8 is furthest away from me. Fold it back towards me. Break those stitches. Trim about 1/4 inch. Match the edges, flip over the paper, pin the seam, flip it to the fabric side, open it out, make sure it covers the shape. And flip it open. So I'm just going to give it a quick press and then give it a trim. Okay, again, because these edges are flopping round, I'm just going to use a little bit of fabric glue to hold them down. Now, some people will actually do a long basting stitch within the 1/4 inch seam all the way around to hold it to the paper. I'm a bit lazy, I just use the fabric glue. So now I can trim off the excess. And there is my bunny head. So all I need to do now is join together my bunny head and my bunny ears, and I'm done with that block. Oh, I do love a bunny. Now, you can either tear the paper away now and then stitch them together, or you can stitch them together and then tear the paper out. If you leave the paper on, you've got a line to stitch through, and when you pin these together, you can actually make sure that you're pinning through the 1/4 inch seam on both sides, because you've got lines. So either option's fine. Okay, let's call it done. Go forth and make a foundation piece bunny head. Okay, bye.